Hello, ladies and gentlemen, illuminated Nubians, Black Swans. Welcome back to another BlackSwanRadio.com production podcast. As always, I have another worldview conversation for you. And as always, I encourage you to explore the world, this wonderful world, and the wonderful Word of God. I'm a big proponent of the Word of God in a non-religious way, exploring the Word in a scholarly way, piecing together the information that has been taken out of context because of its African origins, i.e., illuminated Nubians, which means to bring light to the Nubian perspective that has been hidden in our history, specifically the Bible. And once we piece it all together, the Bible just makes more sense. It becomes clear. It becomes picture perfect. It becomes reality and not some type of fantasy. The metaphors start making sense. The poetry becomes illuminating, and knowledge will set you free. And this is my purpose. This is something unique that I've been on a journey since I've been graduated from high school. And even in high school, I was interested in global studies. I was interested in speech and debate. I was interested in sports. I was interested in writing and English. So these were my strengths even in my early days, and I didn't even know it. And today, I am waking up in the morning, eager to write, eager to explore with my next journey, and I am completely excited about life. And I've come to a certain point in time in life where, I have some missing pieces on the chessboard, but we're in a good position, and we're in a position of peace, a position of freedom. And the thing about chess is that the game is over when the king is gone. The king is in checkmate. But as long as the king is able to move on the chessboard, the game continues to go. And in real life, unfortunately, sometimes you lose your queen. But you can't base your whole game on the queen, because you can move your pawns in a strategic way and promote them to whatever position that you select, and you can select them to become a queen. And so you have to understand that life in many ways is like the game of chess, especially from a male's perspective. Now, I'm not meaning to be male-centered in my broadcasts. What I am saying is I am seeing the world and experiencing the world from a male perspective. And we live in a day and age where the male perspective is demonized, right? And this is it's the New Testament, right? Where the Father is the hidden character in the Bible. And so, I think this leads us to the topic that we can explore today, which is let's start with the race of Christ, right? And, there's a two-part combination to this. You have that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying, "Out of Egypt I call my son." All right? And then you have another component at the end here, that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the prophet, "He shall be called a Nazarene." So you see Egypt and Nazarene. Now, a Nazarene, is a certain bloodline, and we kind of know what the bloodline is, right? But a native, an inhabitant of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, in Jewish or Muslim use, a Christian, all right, which is interesting. A member of an early sect or faction of Jewish Christians, especially one in the 4th century Syria, using Aramaic versions of the Gospels and observing much of the Jewish law. A member of the Church of the Nazarene, a Christian Protestant denomination originating in the American holiness movement, a member of the group of German painters working mainly in Rome, who from 1809 sought to revive the art and techniques of medieval Germany and early Renaissance Italy. So there's a lot of information hidden in each little word. But this is the Germanic people. This is the white culture, or the white nation, and this is the black nation. Now, in the New Testament, the father figure was hidden. It is the hidden one, the one that is obscured. In the New Testament, it was the mother figure, right? That was the hidden one. And I went through that in my last podcast. You can review the podcast where I kind of briefly went over the serpent goddess. And there's a lot more details that I could go into, and I'll do that in other lessons. But what I'm trying to do is get you up to speed so that you can kind of see the way I approach the Bible. So then when you're ready to go deeper into it, you can watch the longer, more in-depth content. All right, but so I'm establishing that it's a biracial, right? That's being nature of Christ that's being hidden. Now, if you go to the Revelation in the last chapter where he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning, the root, the end, the first and the last. And then he connects that to the tree of life, which is in Genesis, which is the first and the last book, Genesis and the Revelation. And then he puts the people, those who practice a lie, in the same thing of, all the other sinners. But what he's trying to ultimately say when he says, Jesus have sent my angels to testify to you these things in the churches, I am the root and the offspring of David. See the two different components, the root and the offspring of David. So when we go to the images and we look at the root, this is the root, R-O-O-T, the river that parts and becomes 4 river heads. The root, this is the root of civilization, where the pillars, the concept of civilizations and theology and arithmetic and all of this stuff is displayed all along the Nile, from Aswan to Luxor and beyond. You can actually go see this stuff to this day, and then you'll see how Rome and Greece were inspired by these things. But the difference is the Egyptian, the original artwork, is full of art, inscriptions, and paintings that demonstrate the culture, right? That's exhibiting the cultures to the foreigners who are traveling up and down the Nile, and it's still happening even to this day, because I was one among them who took a cruise up and down the Nile with my sons, and we got to experience the feeling of traveling up and down the Nile River, right? Like just like it's being described. So this is not only the root, the way it looks and the way it's shaped, it is the hidden, the beneath part, the dark part, in the dark part of the foundation of civilization, but also the root, R-O-U-T-E, the route that you would take from Cush to Assyria, which is being described throughout the Bible, even in the beginning, where it says, he showed me a pure river of water of life, clear as crystal, proceeding from the throne of God and of the Lamb. In the middle of the streets on either side of the river was the tree of life. They're again connecting the Revelations to the Genesis, the beginning, the end, the first and the last, the Alpha and Omega, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruits every month. The leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations, and there shall be no more curse. So there's the cure, and it's telling you that this whole thing has been about a curse on the African people, specifically by the Lord. And God is actually, this is the reason why I said worship God. God is clearly what he's advocating, and God is what blesses. God gave us abundance. He said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over every, everything, over the land, over every creeping creature, every bird, every, fish of the sea. He gave us abundance, but the Lord began to put those restricting Adam, which was originally a deity, a god, the God of creation. He restricted him to the garden and he said, he caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam. He caused the unconsciousness, and Adam's eyes didn't open until after Eve gave him the fruits of knowledge. And that eventually made them unfit to be a slave. They became instantly creative. They instantly covered themselves. They figured it out. They sewed fig leaves together. And the fig is part of figuring out that the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations, right? It's the cure of the curse. You can even Google the healing benefits of the fig leaf and fig tea, and it will blow your minds on how relevant it is in regarding healing the nation. But back to our subject, when I was telling you the mixed race, or the root and the offspring of David, it goes into another dual or two, a dark and a light combination, the bright and morning star. So the bright and morning star is talking about the constellation Sirius A and Sirius B. And if you look at how the towers in what the Bible calls Bebel, but the towers in Egypt, they are aligned with what today under the Greek language is called Orion, who was a mighty hunter, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter. This is the connection in the Bible to the Tower of Babel, because these are towers. And when you go stand outside these towers, what me and my son did, you will hear nothing but babble from all the different languages, from the different visitors and the interpreters that are there explaining the history of the pyramids, right? So you hear Arabic, you hear French, you hear English, you hear Spanish, you hear every language that you can imagine. You'll go outside the pyramids or the towers today and you will hear it. It sounds like babble, but they are aligned with Sirius A, Sirius B, which is one is the bright star and one is the hidden star, is the dark star that you cannot see. Is called Sirius B, and then only the Dogon really knew about this. So here again, we have the setting of the Garden of Eden. You have Adam and Eve. You have the Lord, right? You have the papyrus growing on both sides of the river. All we did is put what we read into a clear, high definition description of what we're talking about when we put back the African, we put back the color, we put back the detail into the story. And that's what we're doing. But so we can't be racist, because this is about a union or a first contact or connection of these two kingdoms. All right. So the two kingdoms that are united by the Euphrates River, right, and which is Assyria and Babylonia, right? Is down here in the south in Kuwait, right off the Persian Gulf. And then this would be the Fertile Crescent, in which you can cross over into Jerusalem. And then Abram, he goes down into Egypt. Now, the person in Genesis 2 is now coming down this river, and he's saying he's going into the kingdom of Cush, the only river leading to from Egypt, or what they described as Havailah, because they didn't want to use the word Egypt, right, is the Nile River. So we know that we're talking about the Nile River and its connection to Assyria, down the Euphrates into Babylonia. This is the setting. This is the river. This is where the Bible is taking place. In Genesis 2, in the beginning and the end, all right, in the first and the last, right? Now a river went out of Eden to water the garden. So this is river agriculture. This is unique to the Nile River Valley Kingdom. And from there it parted and became 4 river heads. I showed you that and what that looks like. The river that parts and become 4 riverheads, no matter if you're looking at it in the south or the way it flows up north, So in its perspective, in the south, it's still in the delta parts, it becomes four river heads. The name of the first is Pishon, and it once would skirts the whole land of Havailah. Havailah, where there's gold, and the gold of the land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone. So gold, bdellium is a rare resin or spice, as found in the Ethiopian or the Cushite, Nile River Valley, and then you also have onyx stone is there. So where are you? The name of the second river is Gihon. It is the one which goes, it says now goes around, but originally it says compasseth, or encompasseth was the original word, but compasseth means you come encompass, or you compass this the into the land of Ethiopia. So what that looks like is, you coming in, passing through the whole land of Havailah, or encompassing the whole land of Cush. All right, so it's still another characteristic of the Nile River flow. And then the name of what it says, the name of the third river is Hiddekel. If you look at this word, it's hide or hidden. Hiddekel, it is the one which goes towards the east of Assyria. So what river, if you are in Cush, how would you go towards the east of Assyria? Right? So again, they're telling you, if you're in Cush and you're going towards the east of Assyria, or you're going towards Assyria, and then the fourth river is the Euphrates, right? You're in Cush. The only river goes towards Assyria is the Nile River. Then it says the fourth river is the Euphrates. So it's telling you about the fourth river is the Euphrates, a river network, the highways. That's why at the end it says in the middle of the river, right? In the middle of the streets on either side of the river was the tree of life, right? On both sides of the river was the tree of life, the papyrus that grows on both sides of the river. So you see where we are. We're talking about the union of two different kingdoms, and you see it right here, Cush and Assyria. When you go to Genesis, the table of nations, and you try to find out, well, where is Havailah? Havailah is the son of Cush. The sons of Cush was Havailah, Septa, Rama, and Septeka. The sons of Rama and Sheba and Dedan. Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. In the beginning of his kingdom was Bebel, Iraq, Elkade, Canal, and in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Roth, Ir, Kala, and risen between Nineveh and Kalea. So again, you see these two nations, these two kingdoms, Cush and Assyria, are connected, and they are connecting, and the children are being interchanged. And you see Havailah is used instead of Mizraim. Mizraim is an Aramaic or Hebraic word that is used instead of Kemet, because Kemet would tell you, of course, is in Africa. So Mizraim is an Hebrew or Aramaic name for the land of Egypt and its people, right? Egypt, that land, they did not want you to know who it is, so they interchanged different words. They end up calling that land Babel in the next chapter, and then in the chapter 12, they'll begin to use the word Egypt when Abram comes into the story. Here, when Abram comes into Egypt, now you start seeing the use of the word Egyptian, because Egyptian is a foreign term for the Kemetic people. Just like it says that the Lord scattered them over the face, therefore its name is called Bebel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth. The Lord did that, not God. And the Lord did this because the people were one. He said the people are one, and they all have one languages, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down in there and confuse their language. It used to be the word confound. The word confound was the actual original word, which confound has a specific definition to cause surprise or confusion, especially by acting against their expectation, to amaze, astonish, dumbfound, stagger, surprise, startle, stun, stupefy, daze, throw, shake, unnerve. I mean, the list goes on. To shake them up, to leave open mouth, to take him back, take someone's breath away, to perplex, puzzle, confuse, to disconcert, to decompose, to bewilder. All of that, to aghast, take off balance, to flabbergast, to knock offside, to blow away, to stump, to face, to decombobulate, right? It's over. There's so much. Be all Greek too. But these words were interchanged to soften the story, to change how you think about the story. But confused, yeah, it still fits in there. It's not saying it's a complete lie, but it's telling you the truth. But people don't understand who the Lord is. They think the Lord is God. They don't notice that in Genesis 4, the Lord started working on his own. God is no longer behind the Lord, and it's because he cursed what God blessed. He admitted that he was keeping Adam away from the tree of life, because if he consumed the tree of life, he would live forever. Slaves were being told that if he didn't consume the fruits of, or the apple, or the fruits of knowledge, that we will all be living forever. We'd be able to talk to Moses and stuff. But that's not what the word says. And in those days, you probably did need to be somewhat of a scholar, because even in these days, even though it's easy now for us, but we had to be somewhat of a scholar. So to finish up with the dual nature of Christ, because we're going to bring all of this stuff together. We went through the bright morning star. We went through the root and offspring of David, because we know the offspring of David is David, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. The offspring of David is the sons of God, or the people who are now inhabiting the land of Canaan. But the root is the Nile River Valley kingdoms. The bright is the white. The morning star is the dark star. And you have to have the knowledge that the pyramids are aligned, with the star constellation in order to really, put all this stuff together. But it's the truth. The towers are aligned with the heavens. It's not that they were trying to reach the heavens. They were aligned with the heavens because that's where they believe the soul returns. But like life begins and life returns. It's a cycle of life. And so the morning star orbits around the bright star at a precise time period. And we could Google that, Series A and Series B. And let's see, Series A and Series B. And I don't know if I spelled it right, but Series A, Series B, the binary star system. Series A being brighter main sequence star, and Series B a dwarf star companion. They orbit each other every 50 years. Series A is the brightest star in the night sky, while Series B is much fainter due to its small size and status as a white dwarf. And so you can read more and more about that phenomenon, but you see that is real, and this is the reason why the story, the tradition is that they were trying to reach heaven. The soul, they believe, of the the pharaohs or the body, specifically for the melanated people, the people of those offspring, returns back to where life began. And so you had the spirit. The spirit is what you cannot see, the hidden part. Out of Egypt I call my son. And the bride is, and he shall be called the Nazarene. You see, these two bloodlines have to be included in order for the avatar to be the holy one or the whole one. So now you see that aspect of the mixed nature. I showed you the mixed nature in Genesis, in Matthew's 2, and in Revelations 2, you'll see where people get the skin of bronze and the hair like wool. They take that out of context, and really what it means is that the feet are of bronze, because the foundation of civilization, the root, is of the brown nations, like dark ages, as some will call it, right? And so the foundation of civilization began in Africa, okay? And that's the dark part. The head, it said the head and its hair were white as snow. And so what that means is the current heads of state, the current this is important here too, but we'll go through that later. But the current heads of state, the current rulers of the world, are the white race. So it started off as the bronze, but it ends up as white. And let's see here. And so it's also a biracial indication here. So let's go into it. Feet of bronze and hair of wool. It's been a minute since I've been there. Revelation, I knew it was in the beginning. Revelations 1:14 through 15. So let's go to there. Revelations 1. I went to 1 and I just went past it. So 14 through 15. His feet were like fine brass, as if refined in a furnace. His voice as the sound of many waters. He had his right hand, in his right hand 7 stars. Out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword, and his countenance was like the sun shining in its strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, but he laid his right hand on me, saying, "Do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am he who live." This is the part here where I'm trying to get to. The Son of Man is very important, clothed in a garment down to his feet, girded about the chest. His head and hair were white as like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like flames of fire. So not only was his hair white, but it says his head was white and his hair was white like wool, as white as snow. His eyes like a flame of fire. His feet were like fine brass. So head and hair were white. Now the white hair, in my mind, signifies an old age or end of age, right? So in the end of age, the heads are going to be white. The heads of state. Its hair, the state of his hair, is going to be white as well, white like wool, as white as snow. Now, yes, it's saying white like wool. It didn't say that it was white like the texture of wool, but white like the color of wool. His head and hair were white like wool, not his hair and hair were like wool, as white as snow. Now, this is also alluding to Exodus when I think it's probably what 4 maybe, where Moses goes into Egypt. Okay, but before he goes into Egypt, um, yeah, you see Zipporah. This is all important stuff too. We'll get into in another story, in another lesson. But in Moses' story, Moses did a couple exercises with the Lord, right? The Lord that was with him, and one of them was as he took his hand and he put it in his bosom, and then when he pulled it out, his hand had turned as white. It turned, what it says, as leopardous as snow. So they didn't use the word white. They used the word. Oh man, it is. It has. Let's see. Maybe is it 6? Excuse me, real quick. So he puts his hand back in his bosom, and then it returned back to his flesh. Man, why am I not seeing this? Give me 1 second. Pause. So, okay, 4, 6. All right, let's go back. So Exodus 4 and 6, where it says, "For the Lord said to him," not God. You know that the word, they could use the word God if they want, but they use the word Lord on purpose. Said to him, "Now put your hand in your bosom." And he put his hand in his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leopardous like snow. And he said, "Put your hand in your bosom again." So he put his hand in his bosom again and drew it out of his bosom. And behold, it was restored like other flesh. So it's telling you definitely that Moses, in this point, although he is a Hebraic man, this is Exodus, right? The Hebrews are now in Egypt and they look like the Egyptian people, as far as, just like Drake is able to hang. He's mixed race. He's able to be among them, but they have different traditions. And this is the reason why, him and his wife, Zipporah, had conflicts. Zipporah kept referring to him as, "You are a husband of blood," because of the circumcision. This was a foreign tradition to her, and Zipporah was the daughter of a priest, so she was familiar with the traditions of her people and her nation. But so that became a conflict inside the families when just like I'm sure there's conflicts, even to this day, when you have these two entities coming together, different faith systems, different traditions and stuff. So this verse is really telling you that this condition of white skin in the region was known as leopardous. Like snow, the skin peels at the exposure of the sun. So it becomes flaky like snow, right? It deteriorates in at the presence of the sun like snow. So these people couldn't really look at the sun as a savior, as something that is a source of life. For us, it's vitamin D. We get deficient if we don't get enough sunlight exposure. But to the certain demographic of the people, which is just their nature, is nothing to be judged right or wrong, is that they had to personify the sun in their form so that they can have something to uphold. so that they can have something to aspire to. And so this is the reason why the Romans and the Greeks personified the deities in which they learned about when they came into Egypt. So instead of Sahu, would represented the constellation that we're just talking about, Sahu, they changed it to Orion. And then made Orion a mighty hunter, like Nimrod. So when you look at Genesis and you go to 10, and it says, Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. Before the Lord is mentioned twice because this is before the Lord came in the picture. He was known as a mighty hunter. But in the beginning of his kingdom was Bebel, Iraq, Elkade, Kelna in the land of Shinar. From that land he went Assyria. So he was a Freemason. He built not only in his kingdom, but he went abroad and built Assyria, went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Roth-Beth-Ir, Kala, and Risen between Nineveh and Kala. So he went abroad. He was a Freemason. He built in his land and took those expertise and built Assyria. And you see the evidence right now in Giza, in the land of where the Canaanites did all the trading in and out of Africa. The only land bridge, they cut it off because of the Suez Canal right now. That's a man-made cutoff that splits Africa from its original connection to the land of Canaan. And they did that spiritually or mentally or metaphysically through the scriptures by putting into our minds this biblical concepts. And it is describing the truth and the true reality of the world, of this earth and the human experience. All right. So it's talking about the families of Cush, right, and the families of Canaan. These are the brothers of Canaan: Cush, Egypt, Punt, and Canaan. Again, they're hiding the fact that the Kemetic people, or the land of Egypt, it used to be known as the Black Lands, the sons of Mem. This is all related, and I'm actually bringing that to the Tower of Babel, right? Because Nimrod, this was the first of his kingdoms, right? He built Babel, then he Erech, Elkade, and Chaldea, and then Shinar. Went from that land and built Nineveh. And this is talking about the Canaanites, the families that were dispersed. Dispersed is another word for scattered abroad, scattered abroad, scattered abroad. The Lord scattered them abroad, the Lord of confusion. It makes perfect sense when you realize this is the Lord of confusion, a master of confusion. But this story you see is about a people being scattered abroad, and in one word, that would be a diaspora. It's about the diaspora. So now you know the story is about you and your people, because I just connected this to the sons of Ham, which were Cush, the Nubians, right? The Nubian, southern part of Nubian, the Nubian people, in the country and the descendants of the Nubian people. Mizraim, this is the word being used for the land of Egypt. At that time, it was called Kemet. Punt, they're not going to really define Punt, but I'll show it to you. I can show it to you right here on the map. You go to the map, and you will see you got Punt, you got Canaan, you got Cush, you got Mizraim, Bebel, whatever you want to call it, Havailah. They even used the word in the beginning. They used the word Havailah. You have to come to Genesis 25 when Abram has his third wife, Keturah, and she bore him 6 sons. Nobody talks about that. But if you go down to verse 18, it says they dwelt from Havailah as far as Shur, which is east of Egypt as you go towards Assyria. So we're talking about from here, somewhere east of Egypt to Assyria. So it's in this area. So instead of saying that they were in Egypt in Genesis, in the beginning of Genesis, in verse 2, when they're talking about the river in verse 10, chapter 2, verse 10, right? They're going to use the word Havailah, but they're talking about here, somewhere here, right? That's what you just seen, but it's hidden because of its African origins. So They tell you they hid it. Look, it's in parentheses, just in an odd spot at 18 in the middle of nowhere. So you have to really be a reader and then be like, hold on. This is more definition to Havailah. Who is Havailah? Havailah is the first person mentioned in the Bible. And he's a nation. He's the son, right? He's the son of Cush, which is the first son of Ham. He's the son of Cush. Cush came first, the Nubians. First came the Nubians. This makes sense in historical order, right? Seba, Havailah is the second son. So we know that if you look at the map, Cushite culture went up the river to Kemetic culture. Then these cultures came in and renamed it Egypt. They renamed it Mizraim first because first the Mesopotamians came in first. They and the Assyrians and Mesopotamians. This is what we're talking about when the Assyrians and Mesopotamians, they're the first to come in, and they changed it to Mizraim. And then the Greeks came in and they changed it to Egyptus, and then the Romans came in and they changed it to Egyptus, and then the British came in and they changed it to Egypt. But it still remains the story, the same place. But I'm just showing you how the African history is being hidden. It's this. This is the Black Lands. This is what we're supposed. This is the temples, and this is the towers that we're supposed to be going and paying homage, pilgrimaging to at least once in our lives. Right? So, now we get into. Now you have an understanding of Nimrod, and that he was a mighty one before the earth, before the Lord came down to Babel, which is the next story. So he built this is about his people. You see how all of that leads to this? This is before you get into Shem's. This is where Abram's going to come from, this lineage. But he's talking about the sons of Ham and the Canaanites that were scattered abroad, the families of the Canaanites. Afterwards, the families of the Canaanites. Well, who are the Canaanites? The Canaanites, these are the brothers of the Canaanites. This is part of the family of the Canaanites. And they were scattered abroad. So now the earth have one language and one speech. This is unity. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east. They journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, they had asphalt for mortar. That's masonry. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let's build a tower whose top is in the heavens. Right? So they came from the east. And they said, let's build a tower. These are towers whose tops are in heaven. All right. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. So their purpose was to make a name for themselves, leave a namesake behind, least in case they would be a diaspora, a scattered abroad, spread across the earth, right? Because that's what they lived in fear of. They knew the nature of what they were dealing with, right? When it comes to the Lord. The Lord is not on the side of the Africans. We're definitely dealing with a Stockholm syndrome. But the families of the Canaanites were dispersed. All right? And so scattered abroad. Now the story is about these people who were dispersed. It told you that Nimrod, the first kingdom that he built, the beginning of his kingdom was Bebel. He built 4 kingdoms in the land of Shinar. Then from that land he went and built Nineveh. So they were scattered abroad. he went and built abroad and risen between Nineveh and Calia. And he stayed abroad. He did not return home. So this is the diaspora. This is the reason why, now there's a lot been added to this story that's not a part of the story. It says, remember, it says, before the Lord, Nimrod was a mighty hunter. Matter of fact, it's important that I point out that it says, therefore it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter. Well, this is another piece to the puzzle, because Orion was like Nimrod, the mighty hunter, right? And it's a whole story. His story is, matter of fact, let's just look it up. His story, Orion in Moreau. Let's see. I spelled Moreau wrong, but let's see if it'll just come up here. Well, there's a whole thing. There's a here. Let's go real quick, because we've already taken the time. So I can just go to my blog real quick and enter my blog. And I wrote all about this and connected all the dots for you. So here we got Moreau. And if you read, I write about how Orion is the story of Orion and its connection to the kingdom of Cush, right? And it's very important because he fell in love with a woman in Moreau, and he ended up going to war with her father over it. All right, her name was Moreau of Cush, or Cush, wooing her by ridding the land of animals. He was a mighty hunter, right? Here we go. The Greek stories are fragmented, but the common theme goes as follows. Orion was a mighty huntsman who fell in love with a woman named Moreau of Cush, wooing her by ridding the land of wild animals. He came in and he killed the animals. But her father, Anopian, forbid this marriage. They were different races. And so Orion got drunk and assaulted Moreau. Did you notice how similar the spelling of Moreau of Cush is to Moreau of Cush? Moreau of Cush is where all of the small pyramids are at. Okay, so there is a story about the Greek in the Cush, and he had, as a consequence, Orion was blinded. He was able to walk on water or travel on water, therefore fleeing to Lemnos, which is in Greek island, which is probably like Cyprus or something like that, seeking assistance from the god of fire, right, and metalwork. So the warlords, the guys that come in with the cannons and the guns. Orion was Lind the servant, carrying him on his shoulder, whom led Orion to the god of the sun, who restored Orion's sight. So he gave sight to the blind. See these like he was able to walk on water. He restored his sight. Orion unsuccessfully sought revenge, and the story goes on. But you see, this is a very much like the Pocahontas story, if you know the Pocahontas story, and all of that kind of stuff. These guys come in to conquer the land. They come in looking for gold, silver, and onyx stone, and the women, the children, and livestock. And so the males are really the enemy. And so we really don't know really what this Bible is about. I mean, it leads to all sorts of history. But it's the Lord that came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now, nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. So he's saying, he came down and he's seen what they begin to do, the sons of men specifically. And, he's saying their unity, nothing will stop. Right? Nothing will stop these guys, because anything they propose to do, everything will be within their reach because of their unity, right? And this is the men. If people don't really recognize, he's the fertility god of agriculture. This is the flail used to spread the seed. because God said, be fruitful and multiply. And it's a double entendre. It means what you produce with your skills and also what you produce with your lineage, for your lineage. All right. But the sons of men is the sons of, you see, Mem is a jet black deity. So they had to cover him up, and then also the natural nature of the man in spreading his seed, and the phallus had to be also covered up. And the Bible is the rib, and it's a whole controversy of what's being disclosed there. But God said, be fruitful and multiply. It means to be fertile, to spread your seed across the earth, right? To fill the earth and subdue it, to have dominion over the sky, land, and sea, basically. All right. So the Lord came down and seen the unity. So he said, let us go down in there. And you got to notice that capital US. He's calling on the higher powers, right? Those with the knowledge, other gods, like gods. Go down in there and confuse their language. Originally, it was the word confound was used, which has a lot more meaning. I think I went into that already. And they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth. And again, we talked about how words are used 3 times to confirm this story is about a people being scattered abroad. That is the main theme. It's not a people about a rebellious king who offended God trying to reach the heavens. This is a people who had unified and began to build for themselves monumental things. Then the foreigners came down. They came down the river. The overlords, the lords, like the Mesopotamian kings, the Greek kings, the Assyrians, the Romans, they came down and they seen these great things. These people were doing the unity, so they said, let us go down and confuse their language. So they started changing the names of the land. They changed what? Kemet to Havailah, then to Mizraim, then to Egypt, right? So Kemet meant the black lands. They say it's because of the soot left behind by the subsiding, flooding waters of the Nile, but it's the people of that land were black at one point. But they became overwhelmed by foreigners. And this Genesis is about the first contact and then the result of the first contact. How the nation has been colonialized. How the people who were natural, who were created by God, were formed into sheep, domesticated. What was people don't even know about the Muflin, and sheep don't know that they were Muflin. But what God has made and had protected, you see the coat, it's made and designed for its survival in the wild. Its headdress, it has head protection. It is made for its own sovereignty. But this is dependent completely on dogs and its shepherds, the German shepherd, the dog, and the shepherds. Otherwise, it is a easy meal for eagle, an easy meal for fox. Or wolf, all right, of the beast of the earth. So therefore, its name is called Bebel. They changed the name again because the Lord confused the language. So the language has been changed. Originally, the word confound, they confound their language. The word confound was used, and I went through that with you, but that's more of a attack, a surprise, to astonish, just like you may be now, to realize this is not God cursing Nimrod because he was trying to build into the heavens. I asked the pastor that and he got mad at me. He said, you got to understand other parts. Well, where's the other parts? Because this is the story that is complete. It's a very short story. The Lord of confusion. The Lord Seth, named after Seth. Seth, E-T-H. He is a nosy creature, the God of chaos and disorder, right? the God of the foreigners, of the foreign nations. All right. So, of foreign lands, the ancient Egyptian god of chaos, storm, and violence. He was also associated with the desert, foreign lands, and of the color red, the red lands, the people, the sunburnt people. While sometimes depicted as a destructive force, he's also played a role in protecting the sun god, Ra. So he was sometimes an ally. But he was often, he was known for violence, as war, destruction, confusion. And so this is the reason why Seth was used as the third son to redeem the son, right? Because the same kind of story in Genesis 4, when the men began to call upon the name of the Lord, call on the name of the Lord, who's named after Seth. See how Seth is born? Also with Seth is born and named Enosh. Enosh is named next to Cain's son, Enoch. Enoch is Cain's son. So then his son Seth borns a son, Enosh. You can barely even tell. But eventually, Cain is cut out of the bloodline. Seth is used, right? Adam, Seth, you don't see Cain. But in Enosh, eventually had begots a son named Canaan. So he reverses it to confuse the lineage. These names are very similar to the names in Cain's lineage. But then you get to Enoch here, because he begotten, not born. There's a difference between to be born and begotten, right? Remember, Cush, the sons of Cush were Seba, Havailah, Sama, and Rama, and Sabteka, but Cush begot Nimrod. Nimrod wasn't included in the sons. He begots Nimrod, right? Begotten, adopted Nimrod. So there's a difference between begotten and bore. So they begot Enoch. After Enoch, Jared. Now these Enoch ended up walking with God, proving that it's possible that man could walk with God. And also, for God took him. He was not of the same race. He was mixed race. Because Cain went out of the garden into the land of Nod, and he found a wife and he bore a son. That means that son was mixed race. All right. So we're talking about the mixing of races. We're talking about putting a word into perspective, right? And how Enoch was taken and confused, right? He was confused into Seth's lineage. Seth, they're calling upon the spirit of Seth, the god of confusion or disorder. All right. And begotten. You can begot a city. You can begot a son. You can take it over. You can adopt it. So Cain, he not only had a son named Enoch, right? But he also named his city. He built a city and called the name of his city after his son Enoch. So after Cain, there's a son and a city. Now Enoch, right, eventually came Lamech. I'm gonna do a whole nother lesson on Dan and Zillah. This is when polygamy. The Bible does not suggest that man should be with one woman his entire life. That's not even really realistic or plausible. It's not even attractive to females. But after Eve came a balance, a new way. And Adah and Zillah is the next two women in the Bible in Genesis 4, but you never hear anything about it. We'll go into that in another lesson. But it's very, very important to understand. Lamech lives. He said, if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. So you see Cain and Lamech linked together in the lineage, and it's before Seth is born. Seth is not born until here. So Cain is linked himself to Lamech, And then this Lamech, he said, if he's avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold. So if you go down and you look, how long did Lamech live? It says, so all the days of Lamech were 777 years, and he died. So we know we're talking about the same Lamech, but this is the man who begot Noah. After he begot Noah, Lamech. So Cain's great-great-grandson, Lamech, who had the two wives in Godzilla, we don't know which wife he had him with, right? He was mixed race. Enoch was mixed race. He's a mixed race. He had two wives. So there was a lot of mixing of the races. So we know this is the same man because he said, if Cain be avenged sevenfold, then Lamech 77-fold, and he lived 777 years. 777 being a symbol of good luck. All right. So Lamech was also taken and put in Seth's lineage through Enoch by reversing the lineage of Cain. If you go to the previous chapter when they're talking about the family of Cain, you go, Lamech is in there, but before Lamech you see Methushael, and you see Methuselah, and you see Irid. And then in the next chapter in Seth, you see that it's Mahalalel. You see Mahalalel, Jared, and then Methuselah. And the only difference between these, and Methuselah, he lived the longest in the Bible, which was 969 years, Methuselah. And if you look at Methuselah close, look at Selah, Methuselah, Selah, and in Cain's lineage, when you see Methuselah, it's Methu, the same, but Shael. So you can see how the words and the letters are being mixed up and confused. Same letters, Heal, switched around to Ela. So it's the art of confusion. Seth, named after Seth, and this is the Lord in which people are worshiping, not knowing that they're worshiping what was considered an evil god, the god of the foreigner. Because this faith system, this belief system, is the belief system that originated out of Babylonia. And they brought it in, and he settled in the land of Canaan. Right? The Canaanites were there because that's where they traded the papyrus. That was the trade routes for the African goods in and out of the old world. So it was all connected. The Canaanites were here to get this papyrus and get all the products, the oils and the perfumes and the spices, and they would sell it to Mesopotamia, Assyria, Greece, and Rome. And this was the old world marketplace. But eventually, these people who had the military power, right, just like Orion went up and he went to go get the gods of metal and the gods of fire, involved. That's like these people coming across, going to the United States, getting the gods, the lords, the masters of fire and the master of metals, to come in and get involved with the ward here in Cush. So you see how all of these stories make perfect sense when you put it in high detail, high definition, clear color, and you have to put the African perspective. You got to put the color back in, and for all this to make sense. So I break all this stuff down in lessons that you can find on my Patreon channel. And, we start discussions. I want to start discussions. I want to get people's input because people see things differently, things that you can add to it. You spark discussions. And, all of this stuff, I break it down in different lessons so that you can see the root, the offspring of David. You see the mixed races. You see it all over the walls in Egypt. It's no secret. It's only secret in the after the Renaissance, when they're trying to wipe out the dark ages, the ages of when the dark people ruled the earth, which is all biblical too. So this is a map of what we talked about today. The black lands, and how the mixed races of Christ, right? The Jewish mother, the Egyptian father, and of course, if you hear all of that, it all makes perfect sense. Why they would keep this uh, secret. You know what I'm saying? The Alpha and Omega, and the Greek altering the words. So we use Orion, we use Sirius, we use papyrus, we use hieroglyphs, we use pyramids instead of towers. We use all of these words. We use Lord instead of master. We use Cairo means master. You know what I'm saying? We use Ovilus, Uraeus. We use all of these different Greek words and form words to talk about the Kemetic lands. And these people were our ancestors, and we are the fruits of those, the offspring of those who were scattered abroad. And this is the reason why these truths are being hidden from us. If you know all of that, it makes perfect sense. And it also makes you want to kind of go and explore all of this stuff yourself. So that you can go from becoming domesticated sheep back to a self-sufficient muflun. But the sheep don't know that they're muflun. They don't know the difference between God and the Lord God. They don't know. They didn't recognize. Nobody told them that God had created and made, but the Lord God formed. You see what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Formed is a difference between created and made. God made the animals. He created man and woman in Genesis 1:26. He made the animals in 1:25. 28, he said, he blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply. Right? So, all of this stuff makes perfect sense. When you put it in perspective, you got the Nile River, you got Mesopotamia, you got the Euphrates, and you have this water route to just flow into each other. And this is the trade route of the old age. And so when you start breaking these things down, everything makes perfect sense. The Tower of Babel, bricks, and bake them thoroughly. That's Freemasonry. Look up masonry, stonework, Freemasonry. They built in Bebel, then they went abroad and they built in Assyria. The two kingdoms, Assyria and Babel, the red lands and the black lands. All right, the red lands and the black lands. Horus ruled the black lands, right? Set ruled the red lands. All right, so if you have any questions about this podcast, any comments, please reach out to me in the metaverse. All you got to do is leave a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. If you are interested in participating in my travel business, or if you want any travel advice, I am offering free consultation, a free initial consultation. Just inbox me with your interest. I have travel guides to Rio de Janeiro, travel guides to Colombia, travel guides to Egypt, and I am working on more travel guides, Belize, and other places in the world that I have been to inspire other people to follow suit and explore this beautiful world while you can. All right. So thank you so much for your time and attention. Make sure you share this information. Make sure you explore this information on your own. The word leads to the access to the world and some of the wonderful joys of the Lord. Right. The Lord is the masters, the man-made amenities of life. Right? Some of the most beautiful aspects intermixed in with the wonderful, marvelous world that God has created for us to experience in. So with that said, like my man and always say, make your next move your best move, right? Plan your next destination and get there by keeping the faith. Peace.